out of the matrix. So the first thing that I teach, and you guys have probably heard, but I'm going to cover it again because you have to understand the system that you're all a part of, okay? When you were born, your identity was hijacked, okay? The government is a business. The USA Corporation is a business. The birth certificate is a product of the United States Corporation, okay? So when you were born, they deceived your parents by giving them a birth certificate. Now, our parents had no idea what they were doing, just like their parents had no idea what they were doing, because we're all ignorant to the fact that these are just they're products, right? They're like, it's like an ankle cuff that goes everywhere you go. And when you choose to use that identity to earn money, you are contractually obligated to pay taxes. So if you go get a job and you fill out a W-9 form and you put your name and you put your social security number and you sign that document, you're agreeing to pay taxes. Look, some of you are going to get this today and it's going to change your life because you are not your birth certificate, all right? And you have to understand that everything in this system is all contractually based. There is no law, and I'm not saying not to pay taxes, okay? There's no law that says you have to pay taxes. Now, if you obligated yourself to pay taxes, then you have to pay taxes. And I will never ever tell anybody not to pay your taxes when you're in a contract. So if you have a W-2 job and you filled out a W-9 form and you're going to work and you're making money, you are obligated to pay taxes. Now, there is a way to get out of that, okay? And we'll get to that in a minute. But here's the next thing you have to understand. So when you start like becoming an entrepreneur and you become successful, right? What do? We go to our accountants or we go to our CPAs. Why? Because school taught us that those people are smarter than we are, right? Why? Because they have a license. Let's just break this down real quick. And I'm not trying to take away from anybody that's a lawyer, doctor, accountant, anything like that. But let's just look at it for what it is. To go become an accountant, what do you have to do? Go to school, memorize a bunch of information, and pass the multiple choice exam. Okay? It's not like you go figure out how to be an accountant. You memorize a bunch of fucking information, which was created by the people that made the board game. See, you guys got to see how this all works, and then you'll see how Donald Trump and all these people are able to navigate around legally not paying taxes. See, you are not your birth certificate. So now, you believe you're your birth certificate, you start making money, you go start a business, you have an idea, whatever it is, start a church, and you go to your accountant and you go to your CPA. Why? Because we're taught that in the system, those people are smarter than we are, okay? So we go to those people and we say, hey, I'm going to open up a business, I'm going to start a church, whatever it is, right? And what do they recommend? Another fucking contract. Oh, you need a LLC. Oh, you need a S Corp because you can do and you can do payroll and you can, get a deduction here and Look, they make it seem like the government is doing you a fucking favor by you now going and operating out of an LLC where maybe they take a little bit less. Maybe they steal a little bit less of your money, right? It's just another product, you guys. All you're doing is you're operating out of what's called a creature of legislature. That means that these entities were legislated by the government. The government created the LLC. The government created the S Corp. The government created the 501c. So if you want to run a ministry and you go to your accountant and they recommend a public government created legislative law 501c3, then guess what? When COVID happens and they tell you to shut the doors, you fucking shut the doors. Why? Because if you don't, your master will pull the tax exemption away from you. This is the way it works. This is why if you truly want to be free and you want to operate a ministry, you have to understand private entities. You would use a 508c1a. It's the same thing as a 501c, except it's private. meaning the government did not create it, meaning the government has no legal jurisdiction over contracts they did not create. Folks, it's not that fucking difficult. You're trapped in contracts. Everything is a fucking contract. Marriage is a contract. Driver's license is a contract. All of these things are contracts that we sign, and now the government is in your life in all of those situations because we are contractually obligated. So you need a private trust. You have to operate inside of an entity that's not one of the characters on the fucking board game. You're not the top hat. You're not the fucking car. You're not the dog. Those are characters that were created by the... Those were characters created by the board game. Okay? You are a child of the creator. Okay? No man has any authority to rule over you. And they know that. That's why they have to trap you in contracts. Okay? You need to understand private trusts. A private trust allows you, and it's got to be the right type of trust. It's got to have 5 pillars to it. To do everything I talk about, it's got to have 5 pillars. It's got to be non-grantor. It's got to be irrevocable. It's got to be complex. It's got to be discretionary. And most importantly, it has to be spendthrift. Non-grantor means there's no owner, okay? The way the legal system works is if I'm going to sue you, I can only sue what I call a dead entity. Your birth certificate is a dead entity, right? Because it's not a human being. It's an entity, right? It's not a human. It's a dead entity. The USA Corporation can only deal with dead entities. They cannot deal with real people, all right? So having a non-grantor trust means that the person that granted or created the trust appoints you the trustee, gives you all the power, and then they resign forever off of the trust. And the Supreme Court has ruled that these type of trust, non-grantor spendthrift trust, cannot be sued. Why? Because it's a private contract and there is no owner there. There's no owner. You cannot sue a document. Now, if the trustee that's managing that document is committing a crime, you're committing fraud, you're laundering money, you're doing some kind of illegal activity and you're mixing it up in the trust, well, then the trust can be pierced. But if there's nothing illegal going on, the trust is a private contract that the government has no legal jurisdiction over. The Supreme Court has ruled this, the Elliott versus Freeman case. A spendthrift trust is not a creature of legislature. Therefore, it is not subject to the myriad of rules and regulations set forth by the legislature. Go look it up. You could, look, there's people right now, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Go read the case law that I just gave you, okay? A spendthrift trust is not a creature of legislature. Therefore, it is not subject to the myriad of rules and regulations set forth by the legislature. They're literally saying that because the government did not create this contract, they have no legal jurisdiction to come and rule and reign and tell it how it's going to do everything. They can't step inside of a private contract and tell it how to pay.